Pom pom pom. Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Hi, sorry, it's me again. Welcome to Feedback Friday Art Edition. So Dave has been sick, kind of, not feeling so hot for the past few days. So it's an art stream. But next week, guaranteed Dave time. So sorry, it's been art like 3 weeks in a row now. Uh, Hopefully that's not too disappointing. Uh, he's either being very busy working on stuff, which is pretty legit. We want to get some stuff through the pipeline, so it's awesome that he is. And also being kind of not feeling so hot. So we're going to do art. We're going to do something a little bit different, although last week was different enough, I think. We're going to be working on some items today. Some kind of should be relatively fast to put together, but there's going to be a number of them, and it should be pretty fun. So hopefully you guys like it. I started an image yesterday, did kind of the linear drawing of it, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's going to be kind of a detailed piece, so it should be pretty fun to render with you guys. And then the rest of the items I haven't drawn at all today. They're all going to be kind of similar, so it should kind of come together quickly once we begin those, but I'll try and kind of work with you guys, get some influence on them. Do all staff members in the MouseHunt dev team play MouseHunt? Absolutely. Yes, we all play every day. Some are much higher tier skill at certain things, like Giorgio is just a gold monster. He is like getting near the top of the scoreboards, in fact. I'm not as good at it. I play it every day, but I'm just kind of like a casual player. I make sure to sound the horn whenever I remember to. Yeah. But yeah, I'm always kind of caught up to the latest content, playing everything that we make, and I love the game. We all do. I don't think it would be what it is if we didn't actually love the game we work on. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of details. Like we created the balance and structure of the game, but there's just so much that you'd have to kind of like keep in mind that like trying to think of or trying to remember how much salt should I take to go after the king grub and stuff like that. It's a lot. I consult the wiki more than you might think. So, all right. So I think we'll just jump right into it. So this is a drawing that I started yesterday. I can't tell you what it is, what it does, all that jazz. Feel free to speculate away. That's great. But it's going to be a pretty fancy render. Of course, it's not going to be like a massive image in game, but I don't know. I want to spend a little time, make it look extra pretty. So I decided to kind of like put a lot of detail into it, just because I think it would be fun to draw together and render, so we can have kind of like some nice kind of materials to play around with. Got like maybe some like gemstones on it. Definitely have some kind of metal binding, leathers, cloth, what have yous. So yeah, so I think this should be a pretty fun one to spend a bit of time rendering. So that's what we'll do. And then we'll see how far we get with this, how much time we have left in the day. I don't want to go crazy long on it, but I do want to spend some good time with it. And then we'll work on some other items, which should be pretty cool. And yeah, see how that goes. So I'm just gonna go at it. Yeah, I assume that next week Dave is probably going to have a pretty long stream because there's going to be a lot to catch up on. He's going to have a lot to talk about. So definitely make sure to tune into that one. It's going to be pretty interesting. So I think I'm going to... This does correspond with the kind of the Rift Valor stuff that we've been working on. It is a part of that release. So I'm going to use kind of the color kind of palettes from the area. So we have lots of kind of purples and blues and darks and like darker kind of tones, some saturated reds and kind of glowing kind of blues and stuff like that. So let's just kind of like pick some colors and start to slap them on. So I'm going to start with just kind of like a base silhouette that I'm just going to brush everything in with. So I'm just going to block it in. This color isn't important that we're doing. We can just replace it if we want. Also, just a heads up, if you hear coughing and hacking and choking in the background, it's no one's dying. Unfortunately, Wash just came down with a kennel cough. Apparently, there's some dogs in the neighborhood that have been kind of spreading it, and the symptoms have struck our boy. So he's going into the vet today at noon. Feel very bad for him because he's just kind of like coughing away, looking at us, being like, "Help me!" So, alas. But yeah, hopefully they'll have some like cough suppressant for him that will help him to feel better. And yeah, for like the next 3 weeks, I have to basically avoid all other dogs with him, and quarantine him. At least we have like a yard kind of with our apartment, so we can kind of like take him back there and then be able to avoid other dogs relatively easily with that. And he can still kind of have some space to stretch his legs and move around. So yeah, that's literally the look on his face is, God, why hast thou forsaken me? Poor guy. Thankfully, he was able to kind of like avoid keeping himself up all night coughing. He seems to kind of not have to hack while he's like sleeping and resting. So it's just kind of when he's walking around, it kind of gets him. So all right, so I'm just kind of just blocking in the silhouette really quick. I'm just kind of overpainting stuff, making sure that stuff lines up, and then we can just erase away. I guess this might kind of be a little kind of technical in rendering in parts. I want to kind of actually get some cool material properties going on. Since it's kind of a quick, small image, it shouldn't take too long, and so I kind of feel okay putting a little extra effort in, especially since it's on stream. It's fun. And actually, I really enjoy kind of doing material rendering. It's kind of something that I find very fun in art, is to try and actually like capture the surface of something, you know, not I don't know. I feel like it's definitely something a lot of people care to do, but I don't know if people always give it too much thought. I mean, it generally works. Yeah, I mean, but it's fun. Like I like to think about actually like the physical properties of what's happening on it, why light acts a certain way on the surface, and even like all the reflections and crazy stuff that's happening and like the physics of the material. I go too far with it, perhaps. But I enjoy it. I should probably be using my opaque eraser, hard-edged eraser, so that I don't have weird kind of soft edges kind of in a couple areas where I don't want it. Yeah, I can't tell you what this is, unfortunately. But it's got some stuff going on. Should be a pretty cool thing. So we're gonna make it look pretty cool. Does the lucky mouse show up separately like prize mice? I don't think it works on that system. Maybe I'm wrong though. I think it is just kind of like a mouse added to the encounter pool. But please correct me if I am mistaken. I feel like if it was using the prize mouse system, it would be encounterable everywhere because it kind of doesn't interfere with the regular catches. So because it's kind of relegated to specific areas, that kind of implies to me that it is actually a regular encounter. Ah, maybe we should remove the lucky mouse from the seasonal garden, because effectively it should only be in areas that don't really interfere with the mechanics of the area. I suppose that tower amplifier isn't the end of the world if you kind of miss a little bit here and there, but it's, if it's just kind of getting in the way of what you're trying to do, that's not the best. All right, so we pretty much have the silhouette of this blocked in. Let's see, did I let that go a little too high on the top? I'm gonna just create a nice clear line. Goes with the sketch a little better there. And I cut that a bit short. Okay, so now we have our base silhouette that everything can kind of build up off of. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a bunch of layers, and these are just going to be the different materials. And these will all clip to that base silhouette that we just created. And you've seen me do this in every single illustration I've done, effectively, but it just kind of lets us paint within the lines, right? So we can be a little bit quicker and not have to worry about kind of overshooting things and having to, paint every edge to the exact same spot. If I were worried about that, I would just kind of structure it differently, where I actually just painted, each material within its space. But whatever, we're doing it this way. It's already started this way. So I'm going to start with the metal banding, because I have an idea of kind of, okay, it's probably going to be the kind of relative to the metals that are found inside of the tower. So there's silvers and golds, and we could probably have the base plates being the silvers, and then like the rivets being gold. Something like that might look good. Let me just pop up the chat, make sure I don't miss anything. By the way, if I like miss things in the chat that you want to make sure that I see, you can feel free to like write MouseHunt in it, and that'll highlight it, and then I'll definitely notice that a little easier, because that's just how it works. At least I think that's how it works. Pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, let's start with the silver, actually. Yeah, if you really want something kind of directed to me, feel free to write MouseHunt, because that should highlight it. Just because I'm logged in with the MouseHunt account. All right, so I'm just going to block in all these kind of plates, and we can play around with the colors. You know, by all means, give suggestions. I will happily implement them because I want you guys to kind of like I came up with the drawing, but I want you guys to help me decide the actual materials and what you think would look good for those. It's not absolutely critical that like this has to be this material or whatnot. Yeah, there we go. At MouseHunt. Got it. Okay. Okay, yeah, it works with the at and even without it. It's this big orange blocks of aw, thanks. Thanks, Robodoc. Very sweet. Of course, you could just be saying that you heart the game and not me, but you know, I'll just assume you mean me. Um, yeah, it's just basically anytime you write someone's name, like their whatever account they're logged in as, if it's spelled the same way, it should highlight it for that person specifically. Purple velvet with gold corners. Ah, royalty stuff right there. I like it. What is the context of this book / color scheme besides these shown? A blood red crystal in the middle could look neat, but might not fit the context well enough. I don't want to go into that too much, the details of like as to exactly what this is, because I want it to be a surprise. I think it should be something that you guys get to uncover for yourselves. But that said, I think that the color scheme and stuff, as long as it looks super cool, I think it'll work fine. And I can kind of, you know, pick and choose a little bit of what, you know, I think is more appropriate. I think for the kind of the center gems, maybe we want to try going with like a deeper, darker color, perhaps, and like the metal would be nice and bright behind it, so there's a nice contrast and such. But we'll see. We'll just try things, see what we like. So nice try getting details out of me, saying, you know, oh, we need it to help you decide the colors properly. It's very important to know exactly what it does, but alas, you'll just have to wait and speculate. So I'm going to try the silver right now, but it'll be very easy to just swap the colors and then do gold. And that was a suggestion, so I'm going to definitely give that a go. Honestly, like right now, it's just a whatever color that I'm using to block it in. It's super non-critical what color I'm using to do this stage. And for the first little bit, it's just going to be me going around the whole thing, just kind of basically, you know, blocking in each of the different materials so that we can then quickly and easily change colors, and then rendering on top of that will be also a very smooth process. But yeah, so there's obviously some metal binding that kind of is locking the cover tightly and securely. So it's a beefy book, nice and solid, sturdy. Is that for a specific reason? Who knows? Not you. All right, so just I probably don't need to be like hyper vigilant to the accuracy of every single edge. So I'm gonna try not to spend too much time. All right, I'm gonna use my smoothing brush for these because they should flow nicely. These kind of sharp curves and, well, smooth curves and sharp edges should look really nice. I'm going to use my smooth deracer as well. So just before starting the stream, Alex and I were watching some Fruits Basket, and I have never seen that show before. And oh my God, it's very heartwarming and like endearing and humble and pure and sad. So I was like, we can't keep watching this because I would like end up starting the stream with like teary eyes and such. Good morning. I've never seen it before, but it's very sweet. It's very silly, very sweet. Oh, it's fun. Just kind of randomly it came up, and Alex was like, "We have to watch this." Yeah. Fruit basket. Fruits basket. I don't actually know what's correct for it. Yeah, thankfully Wash's cough isn't bugging him so much today. Last night it was awful. He was just coughing away. So sad. Yeah, the anime. The labyrinth look in the middle unsettles me. No. Let me see. I missed a couple of comments in the chat. I'm gonna shrink this down. There we go. Now the chat isn't blocked by things. Onyx as the crystal. That could be neat. Can the book be a little rusty or worn out, or is it supposed to be super shiny? That's a great question, actually. I don't know. I feel like it could look really neat if it has like a bit of wear and tear on it. That could look great. Yeah, I want to try that. Yeah. So when we get like basically the rendering kind of like resolved-ish, not like fully detailed, but when we get like really close, we can kind of like start to weather it. And I think that'd be really fun to do because that's another way to show material properties is like the way things weather. Like cloth is very different from metal, from wood, stuff like that. So should be good. Not into anime. That's fine. It is an anime, and it has very many anime kind of elements to it. It's got some anime tropes, but honestly, so far a lot of them are quite good ones. They subvert some of the ones that aren't as great, which is fun. Would still make the edges silver/whitish because wear on gold looks more odd than wear on possible non-inert metals. That's true. Gold really has a lot of resistance to oxidation and stuff like that, whereas steel and others, you'll definitely get a lot more kind of like I feel like gold almost just gets dirty as opposed to kind of breaking down, right? And I actually should probably learn more about those material properties specifically, because I am actually learning some stuff about meteorology. I've been watching a lot of blacksmithing and machining videos and stuff like that where they're working with metals and talking about different steel types. And actually, this weekend, I'm planning on kind of going to a steel supply place nearby in Toronto and picking up some just kind of scrap like O1 tool steel and trying to make a couple of little things like engraving tools and stuff like that because I'm having some fun doing a little bit of woodworking. There's a little sewing box that I made for Alex. Um, and yeah, I'm enjoying kind of making stuff, so I want to do more of that. And I'm into the idea of making my own tools and stuff, so it should be fun. I also found a place that sells hardwood by like in small quantities, so I could basically go and like pay $5 and get like some nice kind of hardwood to make some handles and stuff like that. So metallurgy. I never hear anyone say it. I just see it written in the study of meteorology. But yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Took a machinist course way back. Still have and use the hammer I made. That's fantastic. That I want to do that. You know, like I want to like find a place where there is an actual blacksmithery, and like go and swing a hammer for an afternoon. That'd be fun. Maybe there's something nearby. Are you planning on making an in real life version of this book out of just wood and the metals as well? That's a cool idea. Like I feel like it would be a really neat art piece and a good learning experience to try and do that. I was learning about like doing kind of metal inlays in wood and stuff, and I'm going to try that soon. So maybe I'll add some of that detail in case I want to actually take this on. I feel like this wouldn't be something I do anytime soon, but if I want to kind of like flex a little bit once I've learned how to actually do things with any kind of competence, this would be kind of a fun way to try that. So maybe I'll keep that in mind. That said, this is also kind of like an idea of like, ooh, this would look cool, but functionality-wise, potentially a terrible design. Uh, but who knows? Maybe it would actually be the greatest design that has ever existed for a cool-looking book. So there. Uh, yeah, no, that's a definitely a legit reason why it has kind of such value and such the gold doesn't oxidize, and it's malleable. So definitely reasons why it was used for jewelry and the likes. It's got a lot of pretty awesome properties going on for it. Hence why it's so valuable and it retains that value. Um, Obviously, kind of the rarity of it is another factor. Um, but yeah, it's got a lot of impressive properties, to be honest. Maybe one day I'll do something with it. That'd be neat. There was actually like a tiny little jeweler's anvil at a craft store that we were at recently. Just like that's cool. Just tiny little anvil, you know. It's like that's a neat thing. Maybe one day I'll do something like that. Could be fun. All right. Yeah, right now I just have a nice kind of pile of wood chips in a corner. Yeah, I think I need a more solid workstation, unfortunately, because I'm using just kind of like an IKEA table, and it's not the sturdiest thing to do stuff on. So that might be something to figure out soon. Hmm. Yes, that's right. Forge. That would be where I would want to go. That would be quite the collector's piece if I like handcrafted this and then like put other kind of MouseHunt related stuff within it. There's like original drawings and sketches and hand kind of like pretty much everything we do nowadays is digitally created, but the original kind of like pile of mice and even the map itself was drawn in some sketchbooks and just kind of printer paper of mine, and I still have those, so they're kind of cool to pull out and look at every once in a while and just be like, man, I had no idea what I was doing back then. Yeah. They are pretty neat, though. Yeah, like my original process, um, back with like the white mouse, I think up until the Ninja or Pirate mouse, I would draw it with kind of just a light pencil. I think I used a colored Copic for some of them because it could erase easily. And using the computer once scanned in, you can kind of like hide or you can filter out the color of it. So I would kind of create the sketch, and then I would actually ink it, so that I had line work to paint on the computer, and then I'd bring it in to Photoshop CS4 maybe, um, and paint away. Um, and that was back when I was doing it as commission work for HitGrab before I was actually hired on, before the game had released. Effectively, once the game kind of like got out there and people were like, "This, we love this. Like, we want more. Create more content, please. We want to keep playing this." Um, we were then, kind of like, "Hey, this could work," and so I got hired on full time, and I've been doing it since. So it's pretty nice. I am quite happy that this is what I get to do every day. So I actually really love the game. It's a big passion of mine. If you were ever like a fly on the wall in the office, you would be aware of just how much I care about the project because it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. Um, like when we're talking about game design stuff and I overhear it, I often have the urge to kind of step in and try and kind of be involved and like, you know, fight for what I believe in the design or like caring a little too much at times to the point where it's like, okay, we're just trying to get some work done, Jacob. Gotta go back to your desk and maybe do some of your work. So the life of an ADHD brain. All right. If you had the chance to completely retcon the geographical layout of Narnia, would you rescale slash redraw slash move things? Or is everything perfectly how you would like it? That's a really good question. Um, I would probably want to shift some things, but relatively speaking, things are in an okay space. If I were to just be like designing it for the sake of kind of like making it make sense in kind of like geological, tectonic, kind of like sociological development kind of perspective, which I've done kind of map stuff that way, and it's really fun and very involved, it would be very different. But in terms of game design, because it makes sense to have things kind of like spaced out relatively equidistant. It does work as it is. There are definitely things that I think could move, and definitely things that I think could look a lot better. So there is kind of okay. So I want to redraw the map, not entirely, just kind of the older areas. But I also understand that there are a lot of people that would actually take issue if I did that. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's not a high priority, but at the same time, I would love to be able to do that. And I wouldn't change very much, I don't think. I think just kind of like the castle would look a little cooler. The mountains would be more in perspective. And a couple of things would be just shifted, maybe slid around a little bit, like the iceberg and slushy shoreline. Maybe I'd give a little more space for that. Maybe the harbor would kind of like, you know, be a bit more present and feel more like a harbor as opposed to just kind of a canoe dock. Stuff like that. So I don't know how major it would be. It would certainly take a while to do it how I would want, but I personally feel like it would be worth it. But I also wouldn't want to, you know, upset too many people by changing it too dramatically. I was actually thinking about it the other day, like, what if during like so I do a redraw, right? And then like every event where we like update the map a little bit, maybe I just like slip in a little tweak, pixels here and there, kind of shifting slowly, and then like over the course of many events and updates to the game, it just slowly evolves, like so imperceivable that like you never even really notice, and unless you're like away for a few years and you come back and you're like, whoa, cool, they made the map look nice. Then people are like, what? No, it's always been this way. Sneaky redraws. I think it'd be actually a potential way to do it, where it's not too disruptive. But that said, you know, like if you don't like look around on the map a lot, and then suddenly you come back to it, you'd be like, whoa, this changed. But I don't know. I guess if that's the case, maybe you don't care too much. Hopefully, I don't know. I think it, as the creator of that design, I don't like it, and I understand why people would be attached to it. But I also want better art for as many people as possible. And like new people coming into the game, it can potentially even be jarring to see kind of like that hand drawn with, you know, big blocky markers on paper, and then, you know, other nicely rendered structures, and it just kind of, it looks messy a little bit. So yeah, that's just where I'm at with it. I think I'll do it at some point, but it's not a huge priority, so I don't think people have to worry so much right now. Okay, so that's kind of the binding on the front. I think just for the sake of it, I'm going to fill in these really quick. I think the no, I'll do the other ones, like right here and here and here. They're kind of like, I've drawn them as if they're the rivets from everywhere else, but I think if we're doing kind of, let's say, the silver for all these parts, these should probably be the same silver, as opposed to if I did like gold or brass rivets in these. I don't think it would look good if suddenly these were the gold and brass. I think that needs to be inset in the other metal for it to work. So maybe there is kind of like, you know, like a little band around it, and it's being held by the rivet, but we'll see. I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah, I feel like this book is probably going to take a decent amount of time today, so hopefully you're all okay with that. Just because I don't know, it's nice to kind of spend some time and detail out something that I think will be pretty cool for the players. May not be able to enjoy all this level of detail in the actual game, but we can today. And actually, I am ahead of schedule on my tasks, so I wasn't even supposed to start this until next week, but I'm basically done everything I can this week, so why not? I've earned it, we'll say. All right, so I think what I want for this strip here is that would be like leather or something like that, like not metal, because I'm intending for these pieces here to be kind of the same metal binding. And then this I've pictured as a hinge back here, so that'll also be metal. So I want to break that with this kind of leather behind it. And then I'm not sure what this area is, or this, but I imagine there may be like cloth or wood or something like that. Yeah, back to the map stuff. I think it would be bad if we like reposition stuff significantly. I know that over time we have kind of moved some of the location markers because they start to cover over the art in awkward ways. So it's nice to kind of like make sure, you know, it still feels the same, but everything's spaced out where it's not interfering with itself. Yeah, I do still intend to erupt the Tribal Isles. Not necessarily exactly that, but I think that'd be fun. Um, More so in terms of game design. If you were to recall your time at the Tribal Isles, you might remember it being kind of a very trying time. In the past, when we've kind of looked at the statistics of the area, we have discovered that it is a significantly devastating area for people's experiences. A lot of people will kind of like get to that point in the game and never beat it. You know, it's overly complicated. It took too long. Number of factors, and so I think that it's kind of bad for the game itself if it's that demanding and difficult that players, you know, they get that far, and it's great when people can get that far. You know, like that's awesome. They've held on for that long, but then if the game just kind of pushes them out, that's terrible. You know, like we could streamline that and make it a better, funner, quicker experience so they can get to the current content a little better. And honestly, one of the easiest ways, and I've been kind of actually working on a couple little quick mock-ups for it, is just giving it a HUD. You know, giving it an interface where you can actually manage all those items and mix your things and travel between the different locations easier, stuff like that. Would honestly probably be enough to make that area a little more digestible. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to just actually blowing the island up. It does have that big volcano, but I mean, I don't think I would necessarily do that. Or rather, people might not let me do that, but you know, I would totally do that. I would Yoshi P that island. Um, yeah. All right. So I'm just going to block in the rest of the metal because I need to. And let's see what else. Yeah, that's true. We have snuck some updates here and there. The header illustrations, we've redrawn a number of them. I'm not even sure if all of them have actually made it into the game. Does the original dojo, have the updated images? Because I know we did new art for that. Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna give Wash a hug because he's off to the vet. So BRB. I think I was muted. My beautiful boy off to the animal doctor. I guess he couldn't hear that because I muted it, but he was hacking up a lung. Not nice. Sure, he'll be feeling better by the time he's back though, because they should have like basically some cough suppressant. And honestly, he seems pretty okay, aside from trying to clear his throat, because that's kind of what he's been trying to do. But it's clearly making his throat even more irritated, and yeah. So I'm sure they will help him. Yeah, when we called yesterday, they were like, "Oh, do you live in this specific area?" Because they've apparently been getting a lot of calls about their dogs getting kennel cough, because it is extremely contagious, unfortunately. All right, what have I missed? I'm personally like the map, but I'm not too attached to it. So, some skills could be, yeah, yeah. No, I think that scaling things appropriately would be a challenge, because uh, as great as it would be to make things realistic and like fit around each other, I feel like some things would be just absolutely massive, and then other things you wouldn't be able to see. So I think having the kind of whimsical, cartoony kind of scales of things is okay. But yeah, like I really don't like the perspective in the center of the map, because when I first created the map, I had this idea that like, oh, I'm gonna have it like wrap around a globe, and we'll only need that much space to kind of fit this whole world. So I actually had kind of started it where it was like, if you look at the mountains and Narnia and stuff, they look like they're kind of like wrapping around a globe very gently, and very quickly we were like, oh, that's not sustainable. Like what if we need to like do more areas than we think? What will we do then? So very quickly I was like, it's just a lot easier to create something that looks good and just have it be able to keep growing if I make sure that it just kind of fits the exact same perspective as everything else. So yeah, that's that. That's why those are kind of in a weird, funky perspective, and everything else is not. I actually also, at one point, was like, you know what? I'm just going to make my life easier, and I just drew an isometric grid across the whole thing. So it's like basically, I started with kind of like, squares, and then I rotated it at 45 degrees, and then I kind of compressed it, so it's at if it's perfectly head on, and then I like tilt it down, it's gonna kind of squish down. So everything's kind of painted in the isometric, kind of like there is no like perspective shifting where things kind of like want to go to a vanishing point, because when you're doing something that broad, it's not going to work. So it needs to be kind of like without perspective in a way, but everything kind of like has the same angle. And a lot of games, like two-dimensional games, use that principle. Like your kind of top-down sprite-based games basically all use that kind of idea of the isometric kind of perspective. So that's kind of the principle that I was working with. Is just, I like to render things so they have a little more detail than a pixel kind of grid. All right, let's see. Yeah, the Riptide mouse mechanic. Increase the drop rates of the veggies shells and such. I mean, that would help kind of speed up things. And I'm behind on the chat, and then I just saw ahead of schedule. What's that like? And I'm like, oh, this is me all over, just kind of falling behind on the simplest of things. It's weird to be ahead of schedule. That said, like being ahead of schedule here is kind of like, okay, well, we're ahead of like absolute deadlines, but we have like just an insane amount of work that we know we need to do. So it's not like we can just, you know, spin our thumbs, because basically any free time I want to be spending on the floating islands content and stuff, because we're going to need so many mice for that basically I could just be drawing them nonstop until next year, and we would still probably be like, we could use more. But we'll see. All right. I'm just going to try and make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. Do you like how I read the chat out of order? I'm sorry I do that. Yeah, it definitely needs a HUD. Tribal Isles could definitely use it. Yeah, exactly. It was designed, absolutely correct. It was designed as the end game, where it's like, yeah, we're going to make this take like, forever to complete, and it's going to be grueling and tough, and yeah, like it's going to feel good because it's like the content that you're supposed to like bite into and like enjoy for who knows how long. But yeah, because it's still like nowadays it's like early content, it's like, okay, that needs to be a little smoother experience. We don't need to make it so grueling. Um, just don't talk about the vanilla beans. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The King's credits is actually one of the elements that can be used to compress it, but I think a lot of people don't realize that that exists. So, maybe we need to kind of help with that. Yeah, feels so bad for Wash. Yeah, no, I mean, like at the time, the product of its time, it was fantastic. It had kind of like deep, kind of like mechanics in a sense, and the like having to go gather pieces to construct a trap was actually pretty interesting and exciting. But it's a little kind of like antiquated. Blech, I can't speak today. But yeah, it's an old design that I think is from another time. Um, but I think we also have other ways to kind of like, okay, you could go and build that trap, and it's an ordeal, but there is other traps you can get now that kind of allow you to bypass that, thankfully. But yeah, I think the HUD is enough potentially, and I might make it where like I'm going to pitch it anyways, where basically I create maybe two versions mocked up of the HUD, where one is kind of like, okay, it's the exact same as it is. You have to go and get all these parts or drops and then combine them and then get loot from that and then use that loot to create those cheese. And that's okay. It's a lot to do in a HUD, but what I would actually potentially push for, and we'll see what people like, would be to kind of actually make it where your some of the kind of components are just kind of bypassed, where instead of kind of like having to grow the peppers and combine the peppers, you could effectively drop the seeds and then turn those seeds directly into the specific cheese you want. And it kind of like, all it does is it removes the smallest RNG, but it like mainly it removes several steps, which you had to go and get planting pots and other things, and there's just so many ingredients. You had to be like, oh, I need to get like 32 of those, and blah blah blah. It's just a lot to kind of like just to make some cheese, so I think we